I'm Michael Douglas. Welcome to this edition of Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And on this edition, it's another one of my patented album reviews. This time, I'll be reviewing the album, the third in the trilogy by Abel Tesfaye, otherwise known as The Weeknd. And this release has really generated a lot of interest because this alter ego of his has been very successful up to this point. And he has made it no secret that this album basically closes out a chapter in his career, highlighting a lot of the struggles that he has gotten through over the past 3 to 5 years, I suppose. The time during which this trilogy kind of takes place. And so while a few months ago he said, yes, I'm indeed closing this chapter on The Weeknd as a persona, well, just a few weeks before the release of this album, last Friday at the end of January 2025, he was kind of hedging on that a little bit. So kind of interesting. Of course, as a lot of fans know, this album, Hurry Up Tomorrow, completes the trilogy begun in 2020 by the album After Hours, and then 2022's Transitional Dawn FM. That's the album cover where he looks older, has a lot of makeup on it, and is completed by Hurry Up Tomorrow. And one can really ask, is this Abel Tesfaye's final album as The Weeknd? Possibly, probably, or maybe not. In a recent interview, the king of streaming era synth pop spoke about, quote, closing this chapter, but stopped short of making it official. Now, he feels a little bit different now. Maybe he's got a little bit cold feet, I suppose. But I'll tell you, listening through this over 80-minute album did make me realize why he is hedging a little bit here. He did go on to say, and tell a recent interviewer from the magazine Variety, no one's going to do The Weeknd better than me, and I'm not going to do it better than what it is right now. I think I've overcome every challenge as this persona. Overcome challenges? Is that what this last album in the trilogy, Hurry Up Tomorrow, is really about? Clues abound on this particular album, and it's a 6th studio album and the final part of the trilogy that we discussed that began in 2020. And I have to say that 2020's album, After Hours, I think is a fantastic album, and I think if you really wanted to get to know this artist, that's the album to start with, and then you could probably chase that with Starboy as well, but I digress. On this album, Hurry Up Tomorrow, he is preoccupied with hurting, healing, and moving on. Why waste another precious hour? He sings on the track, The Abyss. One of several introspective ballads, this one called Enjoy the Show, features the fatalistic lyrics, I don't want to make it past 34. And when the curtains call, I hope you mourn. Now, Tesfaye is about to turn 35 in February of 2025. And there's also a sense of finality in the album's 84-minute time frame, which is, I know, a little bit too long, but I'm going to listen to this album and review it. I have to listen to the whole thing, right? The inclusion of some guests such as Lana Del Rey, Travis Scott, and Future, they do a pretty good job for cameos in the album. Disco pioneer Giorgio Moroder, who famously worked with Donna Summer, contributes to the track Big Sleep. And this track sounds a little bit like the Pet Shop Boys slowed down a little bit, I suppose. And when The Weeknd channels Michael Jackson on the track Wake Me Up, again, a very strong track on the album, he brings influential house duo Justice to help him complete that task. When he tells us that fame is a disease on the track Drive, or laments being trapped in a prison penthouse on Cry For Me, these are hardly original ideas, but they do feel like authentic expressions of anguish from this artist, who started out tentatively about 16 years ago in the late 2000s, 2009, with his identity hidden and grew into a stadium-filling superstar. Sold my crib to Madonna, might connect to my father. He sings on the album's dreamy centerpiece track, I Can't Wait to Get There. Childhood trauma and A-list connections on the same verse? Well, maybe it's not a stretch if you listen to this whole album and try to take in those struggles he's dealing with, I suppose. Now, though this album, Hurry Up Tomorrow, has plenty of his usual moody synth pop, it's also speckled a little bit with experimental tracks like the Brazilian funk on the aptly named Sao Paulo. And he flirts with Kanye West style grooves on the track Niagara Falls. Now, sequenced at the end, the title cut to Hurry Up Tomorrow sounds like the theme of an 80s movie. And that's probably not terribly inappropriate given the fact that this album will be followed by a documentary style movie coming out later this year, probably in the spring. So, is Hurry Up Tomorrow a swan song for The Weeknd? Well, if it is, I think it is fitting. If you listen to all three albums back to back to back, I think he really does accomplish his goal at basically telling a story about how he's evolved as an artist and if he's ready to shed this persona, especially over the last 5 years. Tesfaye is pushing forward before he exhausts the collective fascination with his alter ego, and that's not a small achievement at all. He entertains while he does it. I think that's the best thing about this, taken as a whole, and does make it listenable. And when he sings, I'd rather leave somewhat of a legacy on the track The Abyss. I think it's clear that there's no somewhat about it. Collectively, I give this album 3.5 out of 5 stars. I do think it's appropriate for the end of this trilogy begun by the album After Hours, and I think it's a solid listen. I'm Michael Douglas, and if you like what you see here on Dr. Pundit, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. And as the late, great Barry White always used to say, let the music play, and I'll see you on the next episode.